Jake Miller stared out the window of the transport shuttle, watching stars streak past like headlights on a dark highway. His stomach churned, and not just from the weird space food they'd served earlier. He was heading to the Galactic Academy, and he still couldn't believe he'd actually made it in. The application had been a joke at first. His roommate Ben had dared him to apply, saying Earth needed to send someone who wasn't a straight A student for once. "Show them we're not all nerds," Ben had said, laughing as he helped Jake fill out the forms. Now, 3 months later, Jake wished he'd never taken that dare. "First time off planet?" asked the person sitting next to him. Jake turned to see a young woman with short black hair and intense eyes. She held a thick book that looked like it was written in at least 5 different languages. "Yeah," Jake admitted. "You?" She shook her head. "Third time. I'm Lisa Wong, pre-med track." She held out her hand. "Jake Miller. General studies." He shook her hand, feeling suddenly very underprepared. The shuttle pilot, a mechanical voice, from the speakers announced they were approaching the academy. Jake pressed his face to the window and saw it for the first time. A massive space station that looked like someone had stuck a bunch of different shaped buildings together and set them spinning in the void. Lights blinked from countless windows, and strange ships of all sizes were docked at various ports. "Impressive, isn't it?" Lisa said. 27 different species sent students this year. First time they've done an exchange program this big. Jake nodded, not trusting his voice. His luggage sitting by his feet seemed suddenly very small and Earth-like. Inside, his clothes were packed neatly along with a few books, his tablet, and some photos from home. What he didn't know was that Mittens, his gray tabby cat, had crawled into his duffel bag while he was saying goodbye to his apartment. Thumpie cat was currently fast asleep, curled around Jake's favorite sweater. The shuttle docked with a soft thud that made Jake's teeth rattle. Passengers began standing, gathering their belongings, and filing toward the exit. Jake joined the line, dragging his heavy duffel bag behind him. As he stepped off the shuttle, the first thing that hit him was the smell. Or rather, the lack of any smell he recognized. The air was clean, almost too clean, with a faint metallic tinge. "Students, please form a line for processing," came a voice from everywhere and nowhere. The universal translator made every announcement sound like it was coming from inside Jake's own head. He got in line behind Lisa and in front of a tall, thin creature that looked like it was made of living crystal. "Name and planet of origin?" asked the check-in officer, a blue-skinned being with 4 arms and too many eyes. "Jake Miller, Earth," he replied, trying not to stare. "Species, human. Dormitory assignment, Wing 7, Room 432. Your roommate is Velrock of Centauri. Here is your room key and schedule tablet." One of the officer's arms handed him a small metal card while another arm gave him a thin device that lit up with his name. "Next!" Jake stepped aside, juggling his bags and new equipment. He was looking around for someone to ask for directions when a voice behind him said, "Are you lost, Organic?" He turned to see his apparently crystal roommate. Velrock stood about 7 feet tall with a body that looked like it was carved from purple diamonds. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "I'm looking for Wing 7, Jake said, holding up his room key. "I am also assigned to that sector. Follow." Velrock began, moving without checking if Jake was following. Jake hurried after him, nearly tripping over his own feet. As they walked through corridors that kept changing size and color, Jake saw other students. Some walked, some floated, and one seemed to roll along on what might have been tentacles. Each wore a uniform that somehow fit their species perfectly. His own simple blue jumpsuit looked boring compared to the environmental suits and specialized gear others wore. "This is our wing," Velrock announced, stopping at a door marked with symbols Jake couldn't read. The crystal being touched his hand to a panel, and the door slid open. "The air mixture has been adjusted for your biological requirements. Please, do not contaminate the environment with unnecessary organic matter." The room was larger than Jake expected. 2 sleeping areas were separated by a common space with chairs that looked like they could adjust to any imaginable body type. One wall was entirely made of transparent metal, showing the vastness of space outside. That is your area. Velrock pointed to the left side. I will meditate now. Please be quiet. Without another word, the crystal being sat on what looked like a metal stump and began to hum softly. The sound made Jake's teeth ache. Jake dragged his bags to his side of the room and sat on the edge of his bed. It was too soft and seemed to be trying to mold itself to his body. He opened his duffel bag to start unpacking and froze. Something was moving inside. He carefully pulled his sweater aside and found himself looking into two sleepy green eyes. "Mittens?" he whispered, not believing what he was seeing. The cat stretched, yawned, and jumped out of the bag like stowing away on an interstellar flight was the most normal thing in the world. Jake glanced at Velrock, who was still humming and rocking, slightly. The crystal being seemed to be in some kind of trance. Jake quickly scooped up Mittens and looked around the room in panic. The Academy rules had been very clear: no unregistered biological specimens. His tablet buzzed with a message. "Welcome to Galactic Academy. Dinner begins in 1 hour. Please review the dining hall protocols and species-specific dietary restrictions before attending. Academy Administration." Jake sat on his bed, holding Mittens, who purred loudly and head-butted his chin. Outside the window, ships from across the galaxy came and went, carrying students from civilizations he'd only dreamed about. And here he was holding his cat, wondering how he was going to explain this to anyone. "Just don't get found," he whispered to Mittens. "We'll figure something out." Mittens meowed softly and settled into his lap, completely unconcerned about being the only unregistered Earth feline in the known galaxy. Jake woke up to the sound of Velrock's morning meditations. The crystal being was humming again, but this time the sound was different, more like grinding rocks. Through the transparent wall, Jake could see other students floating past in the corridor, heading to their first day of classes. He sat up carefully, making sure Mittens was still hidden under the covers. The cat had spent the night exploring the room while Velrock was in deep meditation. Jake had found him twice trying to climb the crystal being's legs, attracted by the shimmering light. "Time for morning absorption," Velrock announced, not opening whatever he used for eyes. "Your species must consume the paste they call food." Jake got dressed quickly, grabbing his schedule tablet. His first class was interspecies communication, taught by Professor Aixley. He'd spent most of last night trying to understand the course description, which kept changing depending on how he held the tablet. "Can I ask you something?" Jake said as Velrock stood up. "How does the universal translator work exactly?" "It interprets meaning through quantum entanglement with your neural patterns," Velrock replied as if this was obvious. "Your primitive brain can only handle basic concepts, so complex ideas are simplified." "Thanks," Jake muttered, feeling stupid already. He headed to the door, then remembered Mittens. "I'll see you later. Don't go in my room, okay?" Velrock made a sound like breaking glass. Jake realized he was laughing. "Why would I enter your contaminated space, organic?" The corridors were crowded with students. Jake tried not to stare as he passed a group of water-filled tanks on wheels, with octopus-like creatures swimming inside. One of them waved at him. With 3 arms, he waved back awkwardly. "Jake, over here!" Lisa appeared from around a corner, carrying what looked like a bowl of glowing blue soup. "You look lost already." "A little," he admitted. "Where's the cafeteria?" "This level, Section C. But warning, check the dietary guides first. I saw someone eat the wrong thing yesterday and turn bright orange for 3 hours." They walked together, Lisa explaining the Academy's layout. "Each species has their own menu, but there's a universal section too. Don't trust anything that moves on your plate." The cafeteria was enormous, with different sections for different environmental needs. Jake saw students floating in anti-gravity zones, others sitting in pools of liquid, and some that seemed to be absorbing energy directly from glowing panels. "Human section is over there," Lisa pointed, "with Earth people and a few compatible species." Jake filled his tray with things that looked almost like food he recognized. The eggs were purple and the bread was more like gel, but it smelled okay. He sat with Lisa and a few other humans who introduced themselves as Carlos and Amy. "Second day is always worse than the first," Amy said. She had intense green eyes and took notes constantly, even while eating. Your brain starts trying to process all the differences. I had a headache for a week. Speaking of headaches, Carlos added, wait until you try to navigate the bathrooms. 37 different plumbing systems in one building. Jake was starting to feel overwhelmed when his tablet buzzed. Emergency message. All students report to designated classrooms in 15 minutes for morning assessments. They scattered to their assigned rooms. Jake found his classroom, a circular space with seats that seemed to float at different heights. Other students were filing in, and he recognized some from his shuttle. Professor HFY entered last. She was indeed like a huge octopus, but with more tentacles than Jake could count, and her skin changed colors as she moved. Good morning, mixed species students. I am Professor HFY. This is interspecies communication. You will learn to understand each other beyond the limitations of the universal translator. She tapped one tentacle on a podium, and the lights dimmed. First lesson, cultural expressions that do not translate. Human Jake Miller, please stand. Jake stood up, feeling every eye in the room focus on him. Some of those eyes were in very strange places. Tell the class an Earth idiom, the professor instructed. Jake's mind went blank. It's raining cats and dogs? The translator did its work, and several students immediately began talking at once. A bird-like creature flapped its wings in distress. Why would you wish the pain of falling animals? It squawked. This is a threat. The human wants to eat domestic creatures, added a reptilian student. The term suggests mass destruction of pets. No, Jake tried to explain. It just means it's raining hard, like heavy rain. Then why not say heavy rain? Asked Velrock, who was apparently in this class too. Your linguistic structure creates unnecessary confusion. Professor HFY raised several tentacles. Excellent demonstration. You see how simple phrases can cause chaos across species. Now, let us practice with safer expressions. The next hour was spent with students trying to explain their species' idioms, while others attempted to understand. Jake learned that time flies sounded like a threat to the flying species, and break a leg caused panic among the brittle-boned Kryn. After class, Jake hurried back to his room. He'd left Mittens with food and water, but the cat had a habit of getting into trouble. He typed the access code and the door slid open. The room was empty. Jake's heart stopped. Mittens, he called softly. Here, kitty. He checked under the bed in the sonic shower unit behind the furniture. No cat. Looking for something organic, Velrock asked from behind him. Jake spun around. Did you see a, small earth creature, gray, 4 legs? Velrock's crystal body made a considering sound. I heard scratching during my meditation, from the wall panel. The noise disturbed my concentration. Wall panel? There. The maintenance access. Jake rushed to where Velrock pointed. Sure enough, one panel was slightly ajar. He pulled it open and found himself looking into a dark tunnel that seemed to go on forever. Somewhere in the distance he could hear a faint meowing. Oh no, Jake whispered. What is this creature exactly? Velrock asked, and for the first time, he sounded curious rather than annoyed. Jake hesitated. Just my pet. From Earth. I didn't mean to bring him. Pet? The crystal being tilted his head, creating a tinkling sound. You keep another life form for companionship? Interesting. My people bond with certain minerals, but they cannot move independently. Another meow echoed. From the tunnel, this time from a different direction. We have to find him, Jake said desperately. If security catches him, they'll probably send us both back to Earth or worse. Velrock was quiet for a moment. The maintenance tunnels connect to all sections of the station. Your creature could be anywhere. Jake grabbed his tablet and started typing messages to the other humans. Help needed, we'll explain later. Room 432, Wing 7, urgent. I will assist, Velrock announced suddenly. This pet concept intrigues me. Also, you are my roommate. If you are expelled, they will assign me to someone else. The last human they assigned me played loud sounds called music all night. Jake looked at his crystal roommate in surprise. You'll help? I said I will assist, but if we are caught, I will state clearly that this was your decision. Within minutes, Lisa, Carlos, and Amy arrived. Jake quickly explained about Mittens. A cat? Amy asked. You smuggled a cat onto the station? He smuggled himself, and now he's in the maintenance system. We need to find him before security does. Carlos pulled out his tablet. I can scan the ventilation maps. If your cat is moving through the tunnels, he might trigger the environmental sensors. I'll check the automated safety logs, Amy added. See if there have been any unusual biological readings. As they worked, Jake noticed Velrock watching everything with interest. The crystal being asked questions about Earth pets, how they bonded with humans, and why Jake seemed so concerned about just an animal. Found something, Carlos said. Environmental sensors detected a small warm-blooded reading 15 minutes ago. Section 12, Level 3. That's near the main food processing area. Jake grabbed his schedule. I have physics in 20 minutes. I can't miss 2 classes on the second day. Go to class, Lisa said. We'll search for Mittens. Amy's got a free period, and Carlos has an easy lecture he can skip. But she's right, Amy interrupted. If you start missing classes now, they'll notice. We'll find your cat. Jake hesitated, torn between his academic responsibilities and his lost pet. Finally, he nodded. Okay, please be careful. Mittens he's special to me. As he hurried to physics class, Jake couldn't help but wonder what kind of chaos a small Earth cat could cause in a station full of alien technology and species that had never seen anything like him. Behind him, 4 students of different species began planning the first interspecies pet rescue mission in Galactic Academy history. Jake sat in physics class trying to focus on Professor Zerail's explanation of quantum gravity manipulation. The 4-armed instructor was drawing equations in the air with light that moved and changed, but Jake's mind kept wandering to Mittens. Was his cat hiding somewhere scared? Was he hungry? Worse, was he about to trigger some alien defense system? His tablet buzzed quietly. A message from Carlos. Found him, food court level, but we have a problem. Jake raised 2 of his hands, copying the professor's gesture for permission to speak. Sir, I need to use the facilities. Professor Zerail's compound eyes swiveled toward him. Make haste. We are approaching the demonstration of graviton manipulation. Jake grabbed his things and hurried out. The corridors were empty during class time, which meant he could run. He took the transport lift to the food court level, following his tablet's navigation system. He found his friends gathered around a large window overlooking the main dining area. Below, he could see chaos. What's happening? Jake asked. Look, Amy pointed. Bottom right near the salad dispensers. Jake followed her finger and saw Mittens. His cat was darting between tables, chased by 3 security drones that looked like floating black spheres with glowing red sensors. Students were diving out of the way, some screaming, others laughing. Food was flying everywhere. How long has this been going on? Jake asked, watching Mittens jump onto a table where 2 snake-like students were eating. They reared back, hissing in what might have been surprise or fear. 10 minutes, Lisa said. He set off the biological contamination alarm when he tried to eat from the fish tank section. As they watched, Mittens leaped from table to table, his gray fur now spotted with various colored sauces. A group of furry, bear-like students tried to corner him, but he slipped through their legs and headed straight for the zero-gravity section of the cafeteria. Oh no, Jake groaned. In zero gravity, Mittens' normal grace multiplied by 10. He bounced, off walls, ceiling, and floating furniture like a gray comet. The security drones, designed for normal artificial gravity, spun helplessly trying to track him. This is amazing, Carlos said, recording on his tablet. Your cat just turned into a 3-dimensional pinball. We have to get him, Jake said, before security calls in reinforcements. Already did, Amy reported, holding up her tablet. Academy Security Commander Char is on his way. 6 arms, bad temper, really not fond of humans. Jake headed for the stairs. Then we better move fast. The scene in the cafeteria was even more chaotic up close. Students from 17 different species were pressed against the walls, some taking pictures, others looking terrified. Food covered every surface. The security drones had multiplied to 8, and they were starting to coordinate their movements. "Mittens," Jake called. "Here, kitty." The cat stopped mid-bounce between two floating chairs and looked at Jake. For a moment, they made eye contact. Then a drone beeped loudly, and Mittens shot off again. "New plan," Lisa said. "Jake, you go to the opposite side. When he sees you, we'll be ready with a net." "What net?" "This," Carlos grinned, holding up what looked like a shimmering soap bubble the size of a bedsheet. "Borrowed it from the Aquatic Studies lab. It's designed to catch water specimens without hurting them." Jake made his way around the edge of the room, dodging floating debris and confused students. A blue-skinned student with tentacles for arms waved at him. "Is that creature yours? It's magnificent. The way it moves in zero gravity, it's like watching poetry." "Thanks," Jake replied automatically. "Could you help us catch him?" "Of course. This is the most excitement we've had in weeks." Soon, Jake had a small group of willing helpers, including the tentacled student and 2 others who looked like walking trees. They spread out across the cafeteria. "Mittens," Jake called again. This time, several students joined in, though they had trouble pronouncing the name. It came out as Mittings, Meetens, and something that sounded like Murphins. The cat paused on a floating table, looking at the crowd of aliens calling his name. He tilted his head, then meowed back. The response was immediate. Students who had been hiding came out. Some started meowing back. Others made their own species versions of pet calling sounds. The cafeteria filled with chirps, clicks, whistles, and purrs. "Now!" Carlos shouted. The tree-like students reached, out with their long branch arms while the tentacled student stretched across the space. Jake dove forward, but Mittens was too quick. He launched himself toward the main exit, and that's when Commander Char entered. The commander was even more intimidating in person than his description suggested. He had 6 muscular arms, each ending in hands that looked like they could crush metal. His skin was dark purple with silver markings, and his eyes glowed with authority. He moved on 4 legs that seemed too small for his massive upper body. Mittens, flying through the air at high speed, landed directly on the commanders. The entire cafeteria went silent. Even the security drone stopped beeping. Commander Char froze. Mittens, apparently deciding this was the perfect perch, settled himself between the commander's antennae and began to purr. Loudly. Jake held his breath. He could end up expelled, arrested, or worse. The commander's face was unreadable. Then something unexpected happened. Commander Char's expression softened. One of his 6 hands reached up slowly and scratched behind Mittens' ears. The purring got louder. "What? Is this creature?" the commander asked, his voice deep and commanding but somehow gentler. "A cat, sir," Jake replied, stepping forward. "From Earth. His name is Mittens. He accidentally came with me. I'm sorry about the chaos." The commander continued scratching Mittens, who was now making biscuits on the commander's head with his paws. Students began recording this unprecedented sight. "Fascinating," the commander murmured. "The vibrations it creates, they are quite soothing. On my homeworld we had similar creatures, much larger, with more teeth, but the purring..." He trailed off, looking thoughtful. "Sir," one of the security drones chirped, "protocols require removal of all unregistered biological specimens." Commander Tikshar held up one of his free hands. "What protocols say that?" "Regulation 47B, subsection 12, sir." "And what does subsection 13 say?" The drone paused. "Subsection 13 allows for assessment period of unusual cases, sir." "Exactly, this is an unusual case." The commander looked at Jake. "The creature, Mittens, he came with you from Earth?" "Yes, sir. He must have hidden in my luggage. I found him in my room yesterday." The commander nodded slowly. "Accidental stowaways fall under different regulations. The creature has caused disruption but no harm. He paused as Mittens headbutted his chin, and he appears to have some beneficial qualities. So, he can stay? Jake asked hopefully. Temporary residence pending full evaluation, the commander decided. You are responsible for his behavior. Any further incidents will result in immediate removal. Yes, sir, thank you, sir. The commander carefully lifted Mittens off his head. The cat resisted for a moment, then allowed himself to be transferred to Jake's arms. One question, the commander said. Does this creature require special care? Just food, water, and occasional attention, Jake replied. Interesting. My people value the companionship of small creatures. We lost this tradition during our industrialization. Perhaps. The commander trailed off, then straightened to his full, imposing height. Cafeteria is closed for cleaning. All students return to your quarters or scheduled activities. As students filed out, many stopped to pet Mittens or take pictures. The tentacled student introduced himself as Blurg and asked if he could visit Mittens sometime. Even some of the tree students offered to help if Jake needed photosynthesis sitting for his pet. Jake held Mittens close as they walked back to their room. You caused quite a stir, buddy. Mittens purred and curled up in his arms, apparently exhausted from his adventure. That was lucky, Amy observed as they walked. Commander Char could have sent you both home. He liked the purring, Lisa added. Did you see his face when Mittens made biscuits on his head? I think, Carlo said slowly, your cat just made first contact with 6 armed authority figures. Jake looked down at Mittens, who was already falling asleep. His normal Earth cat had somehow managed to charm the most intimidating security officer in the Galactic Academy. He had a feeling life at the Academy was about to get even more interesting. Jake sat in the Academy Council chamber, feeling smaller than he ever had in his life. Mittens was in his lap, grooming himself like nothing was wrong. Around them, representatives from each species formed a semicircle, their various forms casting strange shadows in the blue light. The disciplinary board will now begin, announced Director Quixnar, his tentacles rippling with authority. Human student Jake Miller and the Earth creature called Mittens. Jake swallowed hard. 3 days had passed since the cafeteria incident. He'd received messages from the Academy administration, spent hours filling out forms, and now faced this formal hearing. Lisa and Carlos sat in the observer section offering supportive smiles. You have violated 14 separate interspecies regulations, the director continued. Introduction of unregistered biological specimens, disruption of Academy operations, endangerment of student safety during the food court incident. I understand, sir, Jake said quietly. But Mittens didn't mean to. Silence. The director raised a tentacle. However, we have received unusual testimony. Commander Char, please present your findings. The 6-armed commander stepped forward. Jake noticed he was wearing a small pin on his uniform that looked suspiciously like a cat's paw print. The investigation revealed interesting data, Commander, Char began. Medical scans of the creature show it carries unique pheromones. These compounds have measurable effects on nervous systems across multiple species. A holographic display appeared, showing complex chemical structures. Specifically, exposure to the creature's purring vibrations and presence resulted in decreased stress hormones in 83% of tested subjects. Murmurs rippled through the assembled representatives. The Kraylor delegate, a massive creature with scales and claws, rumbled forward. You mean this small predator has medicinal properties? Not medicinal, corrected Dr. Vixri, the Academy's head scientist. She looked like a floating jellyfish with too many eyes. Psychological, the combined effect of the auditory vibrations, temperature, and tactile feedback creates a unique calming response. She activated another display. We conducted controlled testing with volunteers from 12 species. Results were consistent. The creature's purring resonates with sympathetic nervous systems across widely different biological structures. But what about safety? Asked the Centauri representative, Zelrock's voice chiming like crystal. The creature shows aggressive, hunting behaviors. Minimal risk, Commander Tijar reported. The creature's size and hunting instincts pose no threat to Academy species. Its diet consists primarily of specially prepared materials. No student has been harmed. Jake felt Mittens shifting in his lap. The cat stood up, stretched, and then did something completely unexpected. He walked across the chamber floor toward the massive Kraylor delegate. "Mittens, no," Jake whispered, but the cat ignored him. The delegate looked down at the small feline approaching his claw-tipped feet. Mittens began rubbing against the massive scaled leg, purring loudly. The sound echoed strangely in the chamber. "Fascinating," the Kraylor rumbled. "The vibrations, they remind me of what, Delegate Throck?" Director Kixenar asked. "Of our companionship creatures before the Great War," Throck replied, his voice softening. "We had similar bonds with smaller beings. The practice was lost generations ago." He looked down at Mittens, who had now climbed onto his massive foot. "Perhaps we abandoned something important." More delegates stepped forward. The Viridian, a plant-like being, extended a vine toward Mittens. "My people maintain gardens as forms of meditation. This creature's presence feels similar to our healing groves." Even the Taikani professor raised several tentacles. "From an educational standpoint, the creature presents unique opportunities for interspecies psychological studies." Dr. Vexry floated forward. "Preliminary data suggests introducing similar companion creatures could improve academy-wide mental health markers. Stress-related incidents have decreased 47% in areas where students have had contact with the cat." "Are you suggesting," Director Kixenar said slowly, "that we should maintain the creature as a permanent resident?" "More than that, Commander," Jar replied. He glanced at his paw print pin. "I propose establishment of a companion creature program. Earth's concept of pets represents an underexplored aspect of interspecies psychology." The chamber erupted in discussions. Various delegates talked among themselves in a dozen different languages. The universal translator struggled to keep up with overlapping conversations. "Order!" The director's tentacles glowed brighter. "We must consider regulations, precedent, health protocols." "With respect," said Velrock, standing from the observer section, "some precedents should be challenged." Everyone turned to look at the crystal being. Jake had never heard his roommate speak in a formal setting. "I have lived with human Jake and the creature Mittens for 7 standard days," Velrock continued. "My crystalline structure resonates with the purring frequencies. My meditation practices have improved 23%. Additionally," he added, producing his tablet, "I have researched Earth's interspecies bonding. These pets serve functions beyond companionship. They provide emotional stability, teach responsibility, and foster empathy." Jake stared at his roommate in surprise. Velrock had been researching Earth pets. Dr. Vixari's multiple eyes focused on Velrock. "Your observations align with our biological data. Remarkable." Director Kixenar was quiet for a long moment. "The board will now vote. All in favor of establishing Mittens as the Academy's first official companion resident and investigating a formal pet program?" Tentacles, claws, and appendages rose around the chamber. Jake counted quickly. It wasn't even close. Motion carried. The director's voice carried a hint of what might have been amusement. "Mittens will remain as our first interspecies relations facilitator. Human Jake Miller, you are assigned as primary caretaker with full Academy support." The chamber filled, with various sounds of approval. Mittens, still perched on Delegate Throck's foot, yawned and began cleaning his paw. "However," the director continued, "we expect regular reports on the creature's behavior and impact. Any other Earth students considering pet companionship must follow proper registration protocols." "Yes, sir," Jake managed. "Thank you, sir." As the formal session ended, delegates approached to meet Mittens. The small gray cat found himself being gently touched by tentacles, vines, and claws of all sizes. He handled the attention like a professional, purring for each new acquaintance. "I cannot believe this," Lisa said, joining Jake. "You accidentally brought a cat and ended up starting an interspecies therapy program." "It wasn't intentional," Jake protested. "The best discoveries rarely are," Amy added. I'm already drafting research proposals for pet-based psychological studies. Carlos approached with his recording tablet. This is historic. First Earth cat to achieve official diplomatic status in Galactic Society. Commander Taxar stopped by before leaving. Human Jake. The creature requires specialized care? Just normal cat care. Food, water, clean litter box, playtime. I have been researching, the commander said. My homeworld has creatures called scruffhounds, similar companionship bonds. I am considering applying for one. That's wonderful, Jake said, trying to imagine the massive security chief playing with a pet. One more thing, the commander added quietly. The Academy's reputation for innovation just improved significantly, all because of a small Earth creature who likes to purr. As Jake headed back to his room with Mittens, he passed groups of students discussing pets from their own worlds. The aquatic students talked about bondfish, the crystalline species mentioned harmonic stone companions. Even the energy-based beings wondered about matter pets. You know what this means? Jake asked Mittens as they entered their quarters. Mittens meowed once and padded over to his food bowl. It means you're not just my cat anymore. You're officially an ambassador for Earth pets everywhere. Mittens ignored him and started eating. Some things Jake realized would never change, and maybe that was perfect. 3 months later, Jake stood at the viewing window of the main docking bay, watching the next batch of Earth students arrive. Mittens sat on his shoulder like a furry gray scarf, wearing his official Interspecies Relations Facilitator badge, with resigned dignity. Another group, Amy noted, joining them with her research tablet. Did you see the pre-arrival reports? Jake grinned. Let me guess. Mysterious disappearing food, strange meowing sounds, environmental sensors finding biological traces? 3 cats, 2 dogs, and what I think is a rabbit, Amy confirmed. Plus, someone tried to register a fish, but it didn't survive the journey. The docking area was very different now. Instead of the strict cold space Jake remembered, colorful signs displayed pet registration information in 30 languages. A newly constructed companion creature processing area stood ready with specialized medical scanning equipment. There they are, Lisa said, pointing to the shuttle ramp. The new human students descended, looking as overwhelmed as Jake had felt months ago. He spotted one young woman clutching what appeared to be a small, wiggling backpack. Another student carried a carrier that was definitely barking. Should we help? Carlos asked. He wore his new title of Cross-Species Pet Integration Specialist, on a badge almost as large as Jake's. Give them a moment, Jake replied. Remember how weird this all felt at first? The processing went smoothly now. Security drones, modified with companion detection protocols, gently guided students and their hidden pets to the registration area. Commander Char, now sporting a vest with pockets clearly designed for a small creature, supervised personally. Human. Jake? Velrock appeared beside them, his crystal surface reflecting the bustling scene. The integration committee requires your presence. Jake transferred Mittens to Amy's shoulder. More interviews? Observation session. The Grivanaki delegation brought their methane pets today. They require guidance on interatmospheric companion management. As Jake followed Velrock, he passed the main corridor where new pets were being introduced to the station. A golden retriever was enthusiastically greeting anyone who approached, its tail threatening to knock over smaller species. 2 cats had claimed the tops of luggage carts, surveying their new domain with typical feline arrogance. The integration room had become one of the most popular spaces on the station. Today, representatives from 12 species sat in a circle with their companions. Delegate Throck lounged in a corner, a creature that looked like a cross between a bear cub and a lizard sleeping on his massive chest. Human Jake, Dr. VX floated forward, her jellyfish-like form shimmering. Today's session focuses on play behavior. Can you demonstrate with specialist Mittens? Jake took Mittens back and produced a laser pointer. The reaction was immediate and universal. Mittens dove after the red dot while other pets of various shapes and sizes joined the chase. The room filled with purrs, barks, chirps, and sounds that had no Earth equivalent. Fascinating, noted Professor HX. her tentacles writing notes in the air. The predatory drive creates shared engagement across completely different evolutionary paths. After the session, Jake walked through the Academy's main hub. The changes were everywhere. Hydroponic gardens now included pet-safe plants from dozens of worlds. The medical bay advertised multi-species veterinary care. Most significant was the new wing under construction, visible through the transparent walls, the Interspecies Companion Research Center. "Jake! Jake!" a familiar voice called. He turned to see Blurg, the tentacled student who'd helped catch Mittens that day in the cafeteria. "What's up?" "My people are sending our first cultural pet." Blurg's tentacles waved excitedly. "Bond squids. They communicate through color changes and can survive in air or water." "That's amazing," Jake replied genuinely. "When do they arrive?" "Next month. I applied to be handler. Put you as reference." Stories like Blurg's were common now. The Academy's pet program had sparked something across the galaxy. Species that had abandoned companion animals generations ago were rediscovering them. Others were developing new bonds with creatures they'd never considered before. Jake found Commander Char in his office, a small furry creature that looked like a purple squirrel perched on his shoulder. "Commander, the new arrivals are all processed. 3 cats, 2 dogs, and 1 rabbit cleared medical." "Good." The commander's severe expression softened as his pet chittered in his ear. "Any integration issues?" The rabbit got nervous during the scan, otherwise smooth. "Excellent, and the research updates?" Jake produced his tablet. Dr. VXRE's team confirmed stress hormones down 52% academy-wide since pet introduction. Interspecies cooperation increased 34%. Student retention up 18%. The commander nodded approvingly. The Galactic Education Council is impressed. They're implementing similar programs at other academies. As Jake left, he passed the memorial wall where they'd installed a plaque. In recognition of Mitten's first feline ambassador, whose unauthorized arrival revolutionized interspecies understanding. He found Amy in the common area, surrounded by students from various species. She was explaining Earth dog commands while a border collie demonstrated. Nearby, a cat was teaching a group of scaled students the art of ignore and be worshipped. "How's your research going?" Jake asked, settling into a chair. Mittens immediately claimed his lap. "Better than I imagined," Amy replied. "I'm tracking bonding patterns across 30 species now. The data suggests pets might be a universal psychological need, not just Earth-specific." Lisa joined them, bringing purple juice that sparkled suspiciously. "Did you see the news? The Centauri are developing companion crystals that grow based on owner's emotional state. And the energy beings are creating matter pets from stable plasma," Carlos added. "It's like everyone suddenly realized they've been missing something." Jake scratched behind Mitten's ears, listening to the familiar purr. Around them, students laughed and chatted, their companions creating connections across vast biological differences. "Remember when I thought bringing Mittens was the worst mistake ever?" Jake asked. "Now you're the poster boy for accidental diplomacy," Carlos teased. "First human to achieve pet-based interstellar fame." "Not just humans," Amy corrected. "Mittens changed how everyone thinks about companionship." As if understanding, Mittens opened one green eye, yawned, and settled deeper into Jake's lap. Outside the windows, ships arrived carrying more students and their companions. The station that once banned unregistered biological specimens now proudly displayed pet-friendly and alphabetical order across 37 known languages. "You know what's funny?" Jake mused. "I came here to study general courses, now I'm accidentally pioneering interspecies pet therapy." "Life's weird like that," Lisa agreed. "Small things having big impacts." "Speaking of small things," Amy said, checking her tablet, "we've got a new arrival tomorrow. Something the Kelvari are calling a pocket dragon." Jake groaned good-naturedly. "More integration sessions?" "Welcome to your life now," Carlos laughed. "Ambassador Miller and his faithful assistant Mittens, bridging species through the power of pets." Mittens, as always, ignored the conversation completely. He had more important things to worry about, like whether Jake's lap was properly warmed and if dinner would be served on time. As Jake watched friends old and new share stories about their companions, he realized that sometimes the most important discoveries come not from careful planning, but from small gray cats who hide in luggage and change the universe one purr at a time. The Academy had been in chaos over what he'd called just a cat. Now it was thriving because of that same cat. Mittens had taught an entire station full of aliens something Earth had known all along. Sometimes the best friendships come in unexpected packages. That evening, as Jake prepared for bed, Mittens took his usual spot on the pillow. The cat looked at him with those wise green eyes stretched once and began purring. "You're still just a cat to me," Jake whispered. Mittens responded by gently bonking his head against Jake's cheek, then curling up to sleep. Some things, thankfully, never changed. Outside their window, the galaxy continued spinning, a little bit friendlier than before thanks to one ordinary Earth cat who had shown everyone what they'd been missing.